let's face it, in those days strikes were something new. Militancy, of course we'd had the earlier general strike in Winnipeg where much the same thing happened when an effort was made to stop it. There were two sides to the thing, and the one side was adamant that they weren't going to give in to the strikers. They were going to run their business, and the strikers, if they didn't like it, could lump it. That was the temper of the times.
The Souris Valley in southeast Saskatchewan is rich in coal of a quality known as lignite. The coal seams were discovered in 1874 near Roche-Percy. Even today, outbreaks of coal can be spotted running through the side of almost any hill in and around Estevan. Working for the mining companies these days, a person can make a very comfortable living, but this wasn't always the case.
Black Tuesday. The word black in that phrase refers to coal and the dark, dirty tunnels that early coal miners in this province used to work in on a daily basis some 50 years ago. Black Tuesday refers to a series of events that occurred on September 29th, 1931, 50 years ago in the city of Estevan. That was when some 400 newly unionized miners paraded into the city to make their demands for better working conditions known. They were met at the city by some 50 RCMP and town police, and shots were fired. At the end, 3 men were dead, some 18 others were injured.
The mining in the Souris Valley in the early 30s was underground. Shafts were dug either straight down or into the side of a hill, and through a method of blasting and shoveling, the lignite coal was put into small cars and taken out. Lignite isn't the best type of coal. Due to its high water content, it doesn't store very well. When strip mining, highly efficient, still used today as a matter of fact, was introduced to the Souris coal fields in 1931, the demand for and price of coal dropped. That's when things started getting rough. The miners were making less money than a year before, which was nothing to brag about at the best of times.
I would say at that time I was getting $120 a month for bookkeeping. And of course, what a miner got depended on how much coal he dug.
But Ken John was one of the lucky ones. Largely due to an Anglo-Saxon background and the ability to speak English, he was promoted to bookkeeper at Western Dominion collieries near Bienfait. Most weren't as fortunate, especially the immigrants.
From Germany, from France, from Poland, from Czechoslovakia, from Russia, from every part of the world. I could swear in 10 different languages there.
Alex Ronick lives in Bienfait, a coal mining town, in what's still referred to as a miner's shack. In 1931, it would have been a relative palace. It has 2 rooms.
You had to shovel 40 ton, or you were not there.
And you shoveled that in one day?
One day, in 7 hours.
In 7 hours. How much would you get paid for that?
$4.
$4 for 40 tons of coal.
Right.
Was it hard shoveling?
Well, I'm telling you, I never seen anything closer to slavery than that.
Well, they were deplorable, actually. It was a case of the miners working with conditions that you wouldn't even think of tolerating today, such as there were no such things as washrooms, and of course, like they will come later to wages, they were very small compared to today's.
When your average monthly take-home pay is between $9 and $20, one can't be expected to live in splendor, and the miners in the Souris Valley barely had shelters. They could hardly be called homes.
The sanitary inspector did a survey and reported to the Wiley Commission, which investigated the strike, and he pointed out that they were overcrowded, in poor state of repair. Many were infected with all sorts of creepy crawlers. Their condition was really quite bad, especially in the squatters' fields down by Taylorton. It was really quite dismal there. People were living in hovels hacked into the side of the hills and that sort of thing.
A lot of miners working for M&S, Western Dominion, and other mines lived here. It was affectionately known as Red Valley.
People lived, well, the houses was on each side of the hill there.
And as you see it there, all those bare spots in the clay there where shiny clay is, that's where the houses were. So, and finally, what they got a name, Red Valley, is during the 1931 strike. That's when the mine operators changed the name to it.
They called it Red Valley.
They called it the Red Valley at the time because the simple reason that the miners that lived in here, they were exploited same as the miners that that lived on top, but they were all mostly European people.
I see.
As they call it, Bohunks or Galician, whatever it is, and they were more united. They were more for the Union, and that's when they got the name Red.
Some of the old miners' shacks are still around today. Dug into the hillside, they were made from available lumber and covered with the sides of old powder kegs. An inspector's report of 1931 reads, of 113 miners' homes inspected, 53 were cold, 43 leaky, 52 dirty, what could one expect from dirt floors, 25 overcrowded, and mostly all in need of repair. That report was filed after the Estevan riot.
50 years later, this is all that's left of the old company store of the M&S mine out at Bienfait, Saskatchewan. This is where the miners bought their supplies and their groceries, and it was never really said specifically, but it was implied that the miners should buy their goods here or perhaps not buy them anywhere at all. There were examples of overcharging by the company stores. One example given was that 8 boxes of cornflakes could be bought for $1 at the company mine, while that same dollar would fetch 12 boxes in nearby Estevan.
We didn't have to buy, but we still had to because we didn't have no cash. But at least the company in the Western Dominion didn't force us to buy. Like M&S, the Happy Wolfson, and there where he forced them to buy, and he put the fence all around the camp, and if you go to town, and when you coming in, you had to be let into camp, and they search your wagon or car, whatever you got. And if you find something that you bought uptown, then you pay the consequences.
Though the conditions were bad, one woman told the Royal Commission that it was preferable to live in a company shack because it guaranteed permanent employment. The conditions of employment was the second largest factor leading up to Black Tuesday. If you think living conditions were bad, imagine crawling into a cave for between 9 and 10 hours per day and have someone lock the door behind you.
I found it really quite amazing when you went through the mine inspectors' reports prior to the strike. The various things that they looked at, ventilation was good, the condition of the passageways was good, the refuge holes were good, everything was good or satisfactory, most things were good. Then the strike shut the place down for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, before another inspection was done, again at the behest of the Royal Commission. And with no one working in the mines, you would have think they would have retained a sort of a stable position. And yet the inspectors' reports found everything was very, very unsatisfactory or poor.
All of a sudden?
All of a sudden, with the mines having not been operated for some time, which I find more than passing strange. I don't think they should have deteriorated that quickly in that period of time when they weren't being worked.
The conditions of the mine were quite often the least worry. Just trying to keep your job was often bad enough.
Sometimes your roof would cave in, and dump, maybe anything from 10, 15, or 20 tons of clay and stuff, and they'd make you clean that up, but they wouldn't pay you.
A miner would come to the working place, and it would be water. He has to carry that water for about an hour and a half before you can start loading coal, and the mine operators refuse to pay.
If you disagreed with the boss, he'd immediately say, "Oh, you're nothing but a red," and he'd fire you.
That was done quite often?
Quite often.
What are we going to do? How can we improve? We asked the bosses, and all he told us, he says, there was a quite famous word at that time, if you're not satisfied, take your tools right out. You see, we had to rent the tools from the company, different kinds of tools that we require in there, and we had to pay it. It was very little, but we had to pay it, and if we didn't bring it out, they would charge us a full price for whatever it's worth. So that was it. That was that time that if we're not satisfied, they tell us to get out. So amongst ourselves, we decided to do something. The only thing we can do is trying to form the union.
And so form a union they did, the Mine Workers Union of Canada, some 600 strong. After that, there was nothing but trouble.
Unionization under the United Mine Workers of Canada was not the first attempt by Souris Valley miners to organize. As a matter of fact, 11 years preceding Black Tuesday, in 1920, the newly formed OBO, which stands for One Big Union, was asked to come out to Bienfait to try and help organize the miners. So the OBO sent out an organizer by the name of P.M. Christopher from Calgary to help lend a hand, but this wasn't to be the case. You see, promptly after his arrival in Bienfait, Mr. Christopher was kidnapped, driven across the border to Montana, told if he ever tried to return to Canada, a tar and feather reception would be awaiting him. The 6 people that were charged with kidnapping included a member of the provincial police, a corporal as a matter of fact, and the president of the Estevan Great War Veterans Association. Of those 6 people, only 1 was to be charged with the offense. But the scare tactic worked. You see, Mr. Christopher was never heard from again, nor was the OBO.
Just when I started to work in the goddamn mine. 2 brothers and my old man working in the mine, see? And this one big union come around here. Of course, all unions are communist, you know, as they always say. So right away, you join the communist union. My dad, he gets, because he joined the union, he didn't speak or nothing, you know, for the union or anything, but they fined him $40, my 2 brothers, $40 each.
For joining the union?
For joining the union.
The union wasn't popular, but by the end of August 1931, organizers of the Workers' Unity League and the Mine Workers Union came from Saskatoon, Calgary, and Winnipeg, and they signed up about 600 mine employees. At a meeting in Estevan on the 3rd of September, the large mining companies refused to discuss better working conditions and wages with the miners for a simple reason.
It was started by the wrong outfit. They had endeavored to start unions times before this one, but when this one came, it was soon discovered that they were connected with the Unity League, which was communist.
On the 8th of September, 1931, the strike was on. Only one mine, Truax Trayer, which was a strip mine, was still operating. This fact was possibly the instigating factor to the Estevan riot. RCMP reinforcements were sent to the Truax mine to stop potential trouble by the unionized miners who wanted a 100% work stoppage. The police would patrol mine camps with loaded rifles to make people aware that they were watching. The miners decided that on the 29th of September, they would parade into Estevan and hold a public meeting to tell the townspeople of their plight. Council quickly passed a bylaw preventing any such parade.
Well, they claimed that they denied it, but nobody knows because it was quite a muddle up in there. They said that they sent a telegram to the official in the union, and union claimed they didn't get it.
At 3 o'clock in the afternoon on September 29th, some 300 to 400 miners paraded into Estevan, apparently unaware that they would be met by 20 armed policemen, a force that would grow within the hour to 55.
So when we were going along there, and just as we come to about a block away from the city hall, here was a row of mounties and town police right across the street. Well, when they stand across the street, naturally everything stopped. The whole procession stopped.
But the parade was allowed to come right up to the 4th Street and to intersection of 10th Avenue, I think it was, right by the police station, City Hall anyway. And there was a amount of police lined up, and McCutcheon and I walked out to stop it. And so we went out, and he said, "There's no parade, you people have to go." And they weren't going to go, they started to defy us, and he grabbed one of them, was getting pretty sassy, and this lady hit him with the car axle, and that's when the stuff hit the fan.
When all those people started coming, the police started backing up. They were backing up all the way, about a block there, to the city hall. And then when they got themselves lined up against the building, and of course miners there was quite a commotion. Miners was walking back and forth, all different, even not only miners, but even citizens of Estevan come to see what's going on there. And then they start shooting up in the air.
Well, the melee continued and got worse. The crew on the fire truck were attacked by strikers. who used stones and sticks and clubs, whatever I guess they could get their hand on. And one of the strikers managed to get on the fire truck and seized an axe and was chopping at the hose. And he was shot and killed.
So anyway, when he got killed there, and later on, about a few minutes later, this fellow by the name Krasko, he got shot. So we finally carried him up to the third floor. When we got there, we laid him on the floor, and a matron come around. And she started hollering and calling the names. I don't even mention those names that she was calling, especially elderly woman. I didn't think such a word would come out of her. But anyway, she says, take him away, we don't eat no red ones.
No what?
No reds in here.
Meaning communists.
Yeah, communists. Well, I guess reds, that's what they call them.
Do you think shooting was necessary?
Oh, yes, you had to protect yourself, they'd kill you. And they damn near did.
Nick Nargan died instantly from a bullet through the heart while trying to overtake the fire truck. Julian Grishko, who wouldn't be treated by local doctors because he was a Red, died on the way to hospital in Weyburn. Peter Markunas made it to Weyburn, but died in hospital 2 days later. All 3 men were under 30 years old. 23 others, including 9 policemen, were injured by either flying weapons or bullets. There are still many unanswered questions as to why the Estevan riot took place. If the miners knew they'd be met by police, would they have brought women and children along on their parade? Did council in fact send a telegram telling the strikers that police would be on the scene?
I suspect that they figured that the men would not come when they had been informed that the parade had been banned and that they weren't going to be allowed to use the town hall. I suspect that maybe the police and town council figured that there was an end on it and that they were just totally unprepared for when the motorcade arrived in town.
Even Mickey McKay, a policeman at the scene, agrees that no one was prepared for what was to take place on Black Tuesday.
It was just a kind of a motley crew that we had before. Nobody knew, and there was no plan of action because nobody realized they didn't even have, they had riding crops. That's all they had for clubs. There was no riot clubs. And a mounted policeman hit you with that riding crop, which was just a thin piece of metal in a thong, and it would bend. There was some of them that were running around with these things with an S shape, you know, like a Z, absolutely useless.
I had a very strong feeling personally that council was wrong in denying permission to strike or to parade. Estevan, after all, was the central business community, and the miners were customers and participated in the business life of the city and other activities. And I found it hard to believe in my own mind that they anticipated violence.
After the strike, a royal commission was set up to examine the coal industry in and around Estevan. However, the riot itself was never examined. We still don't know whose fault it was that 3 men died. Working conditions and wages improved a bit following the strike, but the one thing that the miners wanted, a recognized union, was never achieved. Union organizers were tracked down, tried, and spent some time in jail, as did many of the rioting miners. The Mine Workers Union of Canada disappeared forever. Not until 1945 did workers in the Souris field become organized under the United Mine Workers of America. Today, there aren't any underground mines left. There are no more miners, only operators at a massive strip mining operation. A few scoops from this coal shovel represents an entire day's work for an underground man, and the man running that shovel makes more in 1 hour than a miner would take home for an entire month's labor in 1931.
Well, there's no comparison production-wise because we're working with an open pit operation. Everything's done from the top. We don't. The waste is very little. We run about 95% extraction, whereas before it's about 50%. Would be the best you could get with a pillar and room underground operation.
How much coal would come out of this particular mine in one day?
One day we can average 2,000 ton a day easy.
The mines are gone, so are the miners, but the spirit and militance of the Mine Workers Union of Canada still lives in many hearts some 50 years later.
They used to sing, Britannia, Britannia rules the waves. Britons never, never will be slaves. Well, when I loaded coal down there, if that wasn't goddamn slavery, what was it? Huh?
When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? For the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. For the union